His hand struck my face before I could finish my sentence. The sound echoed through the boardroom like a gunshot. 12 people sat frozen around that polished table, watching Mitchell's palm print burn red across my cheek. All I had done was correct a number. One simple number in his quarterly report that proved he was lying about our earnings. The CFO was right there. HR was sitting 2 seats down. Our entire leadership team witnessed what just happened. And nobody said a word. Mitchell straightened his tie like he had just swatted a fly. "Meeting dismissed," he said calmly, as if slapping employees was part of his daily routine. His cold eyes met mine for a split second, daring me to react. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even touch my burning cheek. I just stood up, gathered my papers, and walked toward the door. My heels clicked against the marble floor as 12 pairs of eyes watched me leave. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I pulled out my phone. My fingers weren't shaking as I dialed. My voice was steady when she answered. "Mom, are you still at the airport? I need you to come back. Now." 28 minutes later, the conference room door opened again. This time, everyone looked up to see a woman in a navy suit walking in with purpose. She had my eyes but carried herself like she owned the building. Mitchell was still there, probably thinking he had won. His smug expression melted when he saw the badge clipped to her jacket. Federal Labor Investigations. Division Head. "Good afternoon," my mother said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of federal authority. "I'm Agent Patricia Williams. I understand there was an incident here 30 minutes ago involving workplace violence." The color drained from Mitchell's face faster than water down a drain. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, like a fish gasping for air. "I'll need everyone to remain seated while I conduct a preliminary interview," she continued, pulling out a recording device. "This is now an active federal investigation." HR tried to speak up. "Ma'am, I think there might be some confusion." "No confusion," Mom replied, not even looking at her. Her eyes were locked on Mitchell. "Physical assault in the workplace is a federal crime. Someone want to tell me what happened here?" The silence was deafening. "My name is Missy Williams, and for 2 years I was invisible in this company. I sat in the corner office, did my work perfectly, and watched Mitchell destroy people's careers like it was a hobby. I wasn't planning to take him down, not yet anyway. I was building something bigger, collecting evidence piece by piece. Every bullying incident, every stolen idea, every lie he told in meetings. I documented everything with the patience of someone who understood that revenge is a dish best served with federal backing. See, most people didn't know about my family background. They saw a quiet analyst who kept her head down. They didn't know my mother spent 20 years investigating corporate corruption. They didn't know I grew up learning how to spot illegal business practices over dinner conversations. Mitchell thought he was untouchable. CEO's right-hand man, company golden boy, master manipulator. He ruled through fear and got away with it because nobody dared to challenge him. But when he slapped me in front of witnesses, he handed me the one thing I had been waiting for: undeniable proof of workplace violence. A federal crime with a room full of witnesses. He just signed his own termination letter. The culture at our company was toxic, and Mitchell was the poison. I had watched him destroy careers for sport. Like when he stole Jake's project proposal and presented it as his own, getting a promotion while Jake got fired for poor performance. Or when he blocked Carmen's advancement because she refused his dinner invitation. She quit 6 months later, broken and defeated. He called her unstable in company emails. Then there was the time he made Thomas work weekends for 3 months straight, promising a bonus that never came. When Thomas complained, Mitchell wrote him up for attitude problems. I saw it all. I recorded conversations when legally possible. I saved emails he thought were deleted. I kept a detailed journal with dates, times, and witnesses. I even figured out how to access the security camera timestamps that would prove when incidents occurred. Mitchell created a kingdom of fear, and everyone was too scared to speak up. But fear makes people sloppy. He never bothered to hide his behavior because he thought nobody would ever challenge him. He was wrong. I wasn't building a complaint. I was building a federal case, and I was almost ready to file it when he decided to hit me. After I left the boardroom, I could see through the glass walls as my coworkers exchanged nervous glances. Nobody followed me. Nobody checked if I was okay. They just sat there, pretending nothing had happened. Patricia, our HR director, actually opened her laptop and started typing, probably creating a report that would somehow make this my fault. That's how it worked here. The victim was always the problem. But 30 minutes changed everything. When my mother walked in with her badge and her authority, those same people who ignored my assault suddenly couldn't stop talking. "It happened so fast," someone whispered. "I don't think he meant to hit her that hard," another one said. "Maybe she was being disrespectful," HR suggested. My mother's expression didn't change, but I knew that look. She was memorizing every excuse, every attempt to minimize what they all witnessed. These statements would become evidence of a hostile work environment. I sent one text message to the group chat. "Official federal report being filed tomorrow. Hope everyone remembers what they saw." The typing stopped. The whispers died. For the first time in 2 years, the office was completely silent. They were starting to understand that this wasn't going away. My mother explained the legal situation to me that evening over coffee in her hotel room. She had postponed her flight home to handle my case personally. "Workplace violence is a federal crime," she said, reviewing her notes. "But that slap is just the beginning. What you've described is a pattern of hostile work environment, retaliation, and possibly fraud with those falsified earnings reports." She spread out papers across the hotel desk. "The company is liable for everything Mitchell did because they allowed it to continue. Every witness who stayed silent, every HR complaint they ignored, every promotion he blocked illegally, it all becomes their responsibility." I handed her my evidence folder. 2 years of documentation, organized by date and incident type. Her eyebrows raised as she flipped through page after page of Mitchell's abuse. "This is excellent work, honey. You could have been a federal investigator yourself." "I learned from the best," I smiled. "Tomorrow we file complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Department of Labor, and the local district attorney's office. Physical assault with witnesses? They'll have to respond immediately." I wasn't just going after Mitchell anymore. I was going after the entire system that protected him. The next morning, legal documents started flying. Subpoenas for emails, demands for security, footage, requests for employee records going back 3 years. The company's legal team scrambled like ants when you kick their hill. But they made a critical mistake. Someone in their office started shredding documents. My mother's investigation team caught them in the act through a surprise audit. Destroying evidence during a federal investigation is a separate crime, and it made everything else look 10 times worse. "They just turned a workplace violence case into obstruction of justice," Mom explained over lunch. "Amateur move, shows consciousness of guilt." The company's stock price dropped 2 points when news of the federal investigation leaked. Their lawyers were calling every hour, trying to schedule meetings, probably hoping to contain the damage. But there was no containing this. When you hit someone in front of witnesses and then try to cover it up, you've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. By afternoon, 3 more employees had come forward with their own Mitchell stories. Each one added another charge to the growing federal case. The avalanche had started, and there was no stopping it now. The retaliation came exactly as I expected. Monday morning, I was called into HR and informed that I was being placed on administrative leave pending investigation. They tried to spin it as standard procedure, but we all knew what it meant. They were hoping to silence me by cutting off my paycheck and isolating me from potential witnesses. My company email was deactivated within an hour. My access badge stopped working. Security escorted me out like I was a criminal instead of the victim of assault. But they underestimated me again. 3 coworkers slipped me screenshots of internal Slack conversations mocking my situation. Messages like, "Princess finally got what she deserved," and "Bet she won't be so mouthy now." I forwarded everything directly to my mother's investigation team and my personal lawyer. Each message became evidence of retaliation and hostile work environment. "They're making this too easy," my lawyer said during our call. "Every action they take is just proving our case stronger." By placing me on leave immediately after I reported assault, they had committed another federal violation. The company was digging their own grave, one illegal decision at a time. My mother suggested I reach out to former female employees who had left the company under suspicious circumstances. I found their contact information through LinkedIn and sent careful, anonymous messages. The responses shocked me. One by one, they shared their own Mitchell horror stories, stories that had never been reported because they were too scared or ashamed to speak up. Angela told me about the time Mitchell cornered her in the supply room and made inappropriate comments about her body. She quit 2 weeks later. Rebecca described how Mitchell would accidentally touch her during meetings and then gaslight her when she complained, saying she was imagining things. Most shocking was Maria's story. She had been offered a cash settlement by the company to sign a non-disclosure agreement after Mitchell's behavior toward her. She was paid $50,000 to stay quiet and never speak about her experience. But here's the thing about federal investigations. They override NDAs when crimes are involved. Maria sent me the recorded phone call where HR offered her the hush money. She had kept it as insurance, never knowing it would become evidence in a federal case. We weren't just dealing with one incident anymore. We were uncovering a pattern of systematic abuse and cover-ups. My lawyer decided it was time to go public. She contacted a trusted journalist who specialized in corporate misconduct stories and leaked carefully redacted details about the case. The article went live at 6 a.m. with the headline, "Federal Investigation Launched After Executive Allegedly Slaps Employee in Boardroom Full of Witnesses." By 9 a.m., it was trending on social media. By noon, 3 national news outlets had picked up the story. By evening, the hashtag boardroom slap was everywhere. Current and former employees started sharing their own experiences in the comments. The flood of stories painted a picture of a company culture that was completely out of control. Mitchell tried to do damage control by holding an emergency all-hands meeting. According to my sources inside the company, he lost his temper when a junior analyst asked about the investigation. "I'm not answering questions from someone who's probably too young to understand how business really works," he shouted. Unfortunately for him, the meeting was being recorded for remote employees, and his outburst was captured on video. That clip went viral within hours, with millions of views and comments calling for his immediate termination. The company's reputation was collapsing in real time. The viral video of Mitchell's meltdown changed everything. What started as a workplace violence case was now a public relations nightmare for the company. Their stock continued falling as investors lost confidence. 3 major clients canceled contracts within 48 hours, citing concerns about working with a company under federal investigation. The board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss leadership changes. Meanwhile, my legal team received an interesting phone call. A former IT employee named Kevin reached out after seeing the news coverage. He had been fired 6 months ago for budget cuts, but he suspected it was really because he had witnessed Mitchell accessing confidential salary information to discriminate against female employees. Kevin had something valuable: a backup drive containing files from Mitchell's computer that he had saved before being terminated. Files that showed Mitchell had been systematically underpaying women and minorities while giving raises to his male friends. "I kept this as insurance," Kevin explained. "I figured someday I might need proof of what really happened here." That backup drive contained enough evidence to turn our case from workplace violence into a full-scale discrimination and fraud investigation. Mitchell had no idea his digital footprints were about to destroy him. The company's lawyers made their first settlement offer, $600,000 in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement and dropping all charges. I laughed when my lawyer read me the proposal over the phone. "Counteroffer," I told her. $2 million, no NDA, public apology, and Mitchell's immediate termination. Plus, they implement a new harassment reporting system overseen by federal monitors. "That's aggressive," she warned. "They hit me in front of witnesses and then tried to cover it up. If they want to settle, they pay for the privilege of avoiding a public trial." The real leverage wasn't just my case anymore. The backup drive Kevin provided had revealed systematic wage discrimination affecting dozens of employees. The Department of Labor was now investigating potential violations of equal pay laws. A public trial would expose everything: the cover-ups, the hush money, the discrimination, the fraud. The company would lose millions in additional lawsuits and face criminal charges. $2 million was actually a bargain compared to what they would lose if this went to court. But I wasn't feeling generous. They had 2 weeks to accept my terms, or we would see them in federal court. The company rejected my settlement offer, apparently believing they could win in court. Their lawyers seemed confident that a single slap wouldn't result in a massive judgment. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My legal team spent the next month preparing for trial. We had security footage of the incident, recorded witness statements, evidence of retaliation, proof of document destruction, and now Kevin's files showing systematic discrimination. Mitchell's lawyers tried a desperate strategy: character assassination. They claimed I was a disgruntled employee who had provoked the incident and was now trying to exploit the situation for financial gain. But when you hit someone in front of witnesses, character attacks don't work very well. The morning before jury selection, I received an unexpected visitor. A man in his 50s approached me outside the courthouse and introduced himself as Paul, a former company executive who had been fired 3 years ago. "I've been following your case," he said. "I have something Mitchell doesn't know I kept." He handed me a flash drive. These are recordings of board meetings where Mitchell bragged about getting rid of problem employees and how HR would always back him up. He never knew I was recording. Another nail in Mitchell's coffin, delivered at the perfect moment. Paul's recordings were devastating. Hours of audio where Mitchell openly discussed manipulating performance reviews, blocking promotions for women, and coordinating with HR to silence complaints. In one particularly damning conversation, he actually laughed about slapping a previous employee who had gotten too uppity. This wasn't his first time using physical intimidation. The recordings also revealed that the company's board knew about Mitchell's behavior and chose to ignore it because he was generating profits. They had created a system where abuse was acceptable, as long as it didn't hurt the bottom line. My mother's investigation team verified the authenticity of the recordings and added them to the federal case. What started as workplace violence had become a conspiracy involving multiple executives and board members. The company's insurance lawyers started calling daily, begging for settlement negotiations. Their exposure had grown beyond anything they had imagined. But I was done negotiating. This was going to trial, and Mitchell was going to face the consequences of his actions in front of a jury. The trial date was set for 6 weeks away. 6 weeks for them to panic, while I prepared to tell my story to 12 people who would decide Mitchell's fate. 3 weeks before trial, the FBI raided the company's headquarters. Paul's recordings had revealed potential mail fraud and wire fraud in addition to the workplace violations. I watched the news coverage from my apartment, seeing federal agents carrying boxes of evidence out of the building where I had been assaulted. The same boardroom where Mitchell slapped me was now being photographed as part of a crime scene. The raid triggered a cascade of new investigations. The Securities and Exchange Commission opened an inquiry into the falsified earnings reports I had tried to correct. The IRS started auditing the company's tax filings. State regulators began reviewing their business licenses. Mitchell was no longer just facing workplace violence charges. He was looking at federal fraud charges, tax evasion, and conspiracy. His entire world was collapsing because he couldn't control his temper for 30 seconds. The company's stock price fell below $5 per share. 2 more board members resigned. Their biggest client terminated a contract worth $50 million, all because Mitchell thought he could slap an employee and get away with it. Justice wasn't just coming, it was here, and it had backup. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in federal court. The jury selection took 2 days, and by Thursday we were presenting opening statements. My lawyer painted a picture of systematic abuse, cover-ups, and corporate corruption. Mitchell's lawyer tried to portray the slap as a momentary lapse in judgment that shouldn't destroy a man's career. But when the prosecutor played Paul's recordings for the jury, showing this was a pattern of behavior, Mitchell's defense crumbled. The most powerful moment came when I testified about the slap itself. I described the shock, the pain, and the humiliation of being physically attacked in front of colleagues who did nothing to help me. "How did you feel when nobody spoke up?" my lawyer asked. "Invisible," I answered. Like my safety and dignity meant nothing to them. When Mitchell's lawyer cross-examined me, he tried to suggest I had been confrontational in correcting the earnings report. "So you're saying I deserve to be hit for doing my job accurately?" I asked. He had no good answer for that question, and the jury's faces showed they didn't appreciate his victim-blaming approach. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts. Mitchell was found liable for assault, creating a hostile work environment, and conspiracy to commit discrimination. The company was found liable for enabling his behavior and attempting to cover it up. The judge awarded me $2.7 million in damages, plus legal fees. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was watching Mitchell's face as the verdict was read. For the first time in his career, he was being held accountable for his actions. The judge also ordered the company to implement federal monitoring of their HR practices for 3 years and to establish a victim compensation fund for other employees who had been harmed. Mitchell's criminal trial was scheduled for the following month. The workplace violence charge carried a potential jail sentence of up to 2 years. As I walked out of the courthouse, reporters asked how I felt about the verdict. "Justice," I said simply. "Sometimes it takes time, but it always comes." The company tried to rebuild their reputation after the trial, but the damage was too extensive. They hired a new CEO, fired their entire HR department, and launched a public apology campaign. But it was too late. The scandal had revealed too much about their corporate culture. Customers didn't trust them. Investors were pulling out. Talented employees were leaving for competitors. Within 6 months, they had laid off 40% of their workforce. Within a year, they were discussing bankruptcy protection. Mitchell's criminal trial resulted in an 18-month prison sentence. He was also banned from serving as an executive at any publicly traded company. His wife divorced him. His country club expelled him. His professional network abandoned him completely. The man who had once terrorized an entire office was now unemployable and alone. But my story wasn't ending with Mitchell's downfall. It was just beginning a new chapter. Job offers started pouring in from companies across the country. High-paying executive positions, leadership roles, opportunities to build new teams with better cultures, but I turned them all down. After everything I had experienced, I didn't want to work for broken systems anymore. I wanted to fix them. Using part of my settlement money, I started a nonprofit organization called Clear Voice, dedicated to helping workers document and report workplace abuse. We provided legal resources, emotional support, and investigative assistance to people facing situations like mine. My mother joined as an advisor, bringing her federal expertise to help victims navigate complex legal systems. Paul volunteered to help with technology and security, ensuring our clients' evidence was properly protected. Within 6 months, we had helped 12 employees successfully report and resolve workplace abuse cases. Within a year, we were working with the Department of Labor to develop new reporting standards. Clear Voice wasn't just about revenge or compensation. It was about preventing other people from experiencing what I went through. It was about making workplaces safer for everyone. 2 years after the trial, I received a case that brought everything full circle. A young woman named Tracy contacted Clear Voice about harassment she was experiencing at a mid-sized consulting firm. Her story was painfully familiar. A male supervisor who took credit for her work, made inappropriate comments, and retaliated when she complained to HR. "I feel invisible," she told me during our first phone call, "like nobody cares what happens to me." I knew exactly how she felt. We helped Tracy document the harassment, connect with employment lawyers, and file complaints with the appropriate agencies. Her case resulted in a settlement and policy changes at her company. But more importantly, Tracy didn't have to face the situation alone. She had advocates, resources, and a clear path to justice. "You saved my career," she told me after her case was resolved. "No," I replied. "You saved your own career. I just helped you find the tools." That's what Clear Voice was really about. Giving people the tools to protect themselves and others. Last month, I received an email that I had been expecting for 3 years. The subject line read, "Please, I need help." It was from Mitchell. He had been released from prison 6 months earlier and was struggling to find work. His savings were gone, his reputation was destroyed, and he was facing eviction from his apartment. The email was long and rambling, full of apologies and excuses. He claimed he had learned from his mistakes and wanted a chance to make things right. He asked if I could help him find employment, or at least provide a reference for potential employers. I read the entire message twice, remembering the man who had slapped me in front of witnesses and then tried to destroy my career. The man who had terrorized countless employees and ruined lives for sport. Then I deleted the email without responding. Some people deserve second chances. Others need to live with the consequences of their choices. Mitchell made his choice when he decided violence was an acceptable management tool. Now he gets to live with that choice forever. Clear Voice has grown beyond anything I imagined when I started it. We now have offices in 12 cities and have helped over 300 workers resolve workplace abuse cases. We've partnered with law schools to provide free legal clinics, worked with corporations to develop better reporting systems, and lobbied for stronger worker protection laws. The ripple effects of my case continue spreading. Mitchell's conviction set legal precedents that other prosecutors use in similar cases. The company's bankruptcy led to industry-wide changes in corporate governance. Most importantly, workers are speaking up more. They know their rights better. They document incidents more carefully. They demand accountability from their employers. The culture of silence that protected Mitchell and others like him is finally breaking down. That's the real victory. Not the money, not the headlines, not even Mitchell's downfall. The real victory is that fewer people will suffer in silence because of what we accomplished. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not trying to resolve things quietly with Mitchell before involving federal investigators. The answer is always no. Men like Mitchell don't change because someone asks nicely. They change when they face real consequences for their actions. If I had gone to HR first, they would have buried my complaint like they buried all the others. If I had tried to negotiate privately, Mitchell would have found a way to retaliate and silence me. But by involving federal law enforcement immediately, I made sure there was no cover-up, no backroom deal, no quiet settlement that would allow the abuse to continue. Mitchell's slap wasn't just an assault on me. It was an assault on every employee who deserved to work in a safe environment. By fighting back with everything I had, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was protecting everyone who came after me. That's worth more than any settlement or apology could ever be. This morning, I received a letter from a college student who had read about my case in her business ethics class. She was starting her first internship and wanted advice about recognizing and reporting workplace abuse. I wrote back with practical tips. Document everything, know your rights, build a support network, never suffer in silence. But the most important thing I told her was this: your voice matters, your safety matters, and you have the power to change things. That 18-year-old intern has more power than she realizes. She has the power to speak up when she sees something wrong. She has the power to support colleagues who are being mistreated. She has the power to demand better from her employers. The next generation of workers won't accept the culture of fear and silence that protected people like Mitchell for so long. They'll expect better, demand better, and create better workplaces for everyone. That's Mitchell's real legacy. Not the lives he destroyed, but the movement he accidentally created when he decided to slap the wrong person. 5 years have passed since Mitchell's hand struck my face in that boardroom. 5 years since I made the phone call that changed everything. Clear Voice now operates in 25 states and has helped over 1,000 workers find justice. We've secured $50 million in settlements and judgments for abuse victims. We've helped pass new laws in 12 states strengthening worker protections. Mitchell is working at a fast food restaurant in another state, living in a studio apartment, driving a 15-year-old car. His life is small now, limited by the choices he made and the bridges he burned. Meanwhile, I'm testifying before Congress next month about workplace violence prevention. I'm consulting with Fortune 500 companies on building ethical cultures. I'm mentoring the next generation of worker advocates. The difference between us isn't talent or luck or connections. The difference is that when faced with injustice, I chose to fight back with intelligence, preparation, and the law. Mitchell chose violence and intimidation. I chose documentation and federal investigators. He thought his power made him untouchable. I proved that nobody is above the law. And the best part? I never raised my voice. I just made one call.